Welcome back to Excel 2016, Module 1. This is Part 4. This is our last part. We're going to look at formatting your worksheet and also printing. So you need to be back in our game card workbook, with the customer order worksheet as the active worksheet. So we're going to be looking at how we can make this formatted to make it a little more readable and a little easier to work with. So the first thing we want to look at are borders. And I always like to add a little bit to what the text covers with borders, because I like to show you the difference between borders and underlines. Okay, so we're going to start out working with A3 through B7. All right, so with this, you can see that what we are going to do is add some borders around every cell. This border button starts out, if I just push it, as a bottom border. However, there are many other options that I can do. And so if I come down with this drop down and I choose all borders, you can see that it'll put lines around all of them. Now, if I hover over that border button, it no longer says all border, or excuse me, bottom border. It changed to all borders because that's what I used last. So let's go ahead and choose A9 through B16. And again, choose all borders. We can also then choose H18 through, A18 through I23. And then if I wanted to add this sales tax section, I could hold my control key down and highlight H17 and I17, and again choose all borders. And then I could also choose this last section here in H25 through I28 and choose all borders. Now I'm going to zoom out quite a bit for just a minute. You don't have to do this, but I want you to see the difference, and I'm going to scroll up to this manufacturer title here. Okay, so right now it has all borders around it, but I want you to see what happens when you add an underline. If you look at the underline, the difference between a border and an underline is the information is the only thing underlined. So if I have test, it doesn't matter how many spaces I add after the word test. I'm typing spaces all the way across. When I hit underline, it's going to try to do that, but notice it does not put it on the bottom of the box. And if you get too many spaces, it goes over the border. And if you change column widths, then it may not cover it all. So if I went, or it may cover too much. Notice when I shrink down, it sticks out too far. If I do a bottom border, it will always cover the entire cell bottom. Okay, so that's the difference. Underline underlines the text. Border underlines the entire border of the cell. Okay. Make sure when you're doing your SAM homework, you read the instructions carefully and that you get the correct option. So for example, is this supposed to have a thick outside border and then maybe also all borders? And then I could add a thick one afterwards, and you can see the difference it makes. All right, so make sure you read the instructions carefully so that you get the correct border option when you're working with those. As you can see, the button maintains the last one. Now it's a thick outside border. Now let's look at fonts. If I click on A1, obviously I have all these fonts that I can work with. We'll talk more about fonts and themes in the next tutorial. But I could change the size if I want to, so I'm going to increase that to 28. And then we're going to go ahead and save. All right, now let's say I'm getting ready to print. So I'm going to look at the different layouts. I'm going to go ahead and get this back to 100. All right. And I'm going to delete this test and tell it that this cell gets no border. All right. So now I have all the information we have. I'm ready to print. Let's go ahead and save. There's different layouts down here. Okay, the first one says normal layout. That's where we're going to do most of our work. But there's also a page layout. So this is going to show me how the page breaks are going to happen. There's also one over here called a page break preview. Okay. So with page layout, I can see that it's going to be on 2 pages. And if you shrink it down, you can see how it's going to look. If I switch to page break, you can see where the page breaks are going to take place. So this blue dotted line is showing me a page break. I'm going to go up to 75%. And you can see when I went too small, I saw different, the number sizes. It's a lot easier to read. When you go to normal, this is what you will normally be working with. But now that we switched, you see this extra dotted line. That again is showing you the page break. So you can see that right now it would not fit on one piece of paper. So one thing we can do to try to fix that is to change the orientation. Most of the settings we're going to use for setting it up to print are going to be on this page layout tab. So the first thing we're going to do is change the orientation so that instead of printing portrait, which is the longest side of the paper is going up and down, we're going to flip it on its side and do landscape printing. But as you can see, even with landscape printing, we're getting a page break in the middle of our data. And we don't want that. So let's look at this scaling. Right here, I have it set to automatic width and automatic height, and I want it to be 100%. So it's exactly the way it prints on the screen. Okay, so it keeps the font. Now, if I lowered that percent, notice each time I lower it, it moves that page break over. Okay, so that's one way you can make it fit, is to alter the percentage. But let's say I don't want to have to play with that. I just always want this to fit on one page. Well, instead of telling Excel to automatically take as many pages as it needs wide and high, I can force it and say I always want it to be one page high and one page wide. And then it will shrink the percentage down appropriately to make that happen. And it will show you the percentage that it's using. So you can see it went down to 86% in order to make it fit. That's still large enough that it's probably readable. So it's probably okay. But what you want to look at is, what that percentage is. If it drops down below 50%, you may have a hard time reading it. So you may want to rethink that. All right. So now we want to take a preview. So if we click on the File tab to go to our Backstage view and choose the Print option, it will automatically give us a print preview. Excel years ago used to have a separate option that said Print Preview, but everybody always wants to see it before they print it. So they've now added that as a standard feature. It always comes up. Once in a while, you could see a button here that you have to click if you want to see the preview. Okay? You have the ability here to change printers. So on campus, one thing you may want to do if there's something you want to print is there's usually going to be some sort of a Adobe PDF or some sort of a PDF writer. If there's something you want to print, but perhaps you don't want to use your paper allotment, you could print it to a PDF document and store it in the cloud and then print it when you got home if you wanted a hard copy. We also have the ability of, instead of only printing the active sheet, I can print the entire workbook. It will then print our documentation page and our customer order page. And if you notice, The page setup information we did, which converted it to landscape printing, only affects the sheet that we are working with when we make those changes. Okay, so we can always look at all the pages. If I don't actually want to print, I can simply hit this back arrow and it takes me back to my workbook, at which point I am going to go ahead and save this. Okay, the last thing we can look at are the page layout view. We're gonna go to press the Control and the plus. No, I didn't like that. If we want to see formulas in our worksheet, we can go to the Show Formula button in the Formula Auditing group. Okay, so you're going to go to the Formulas, and then you're going to click on Show Formulas. And now notice each of the formulas are displayed in the cells instead of seeing the answers. So some people like to do this when they're trying to document a worksheet. Maybe they want to print it out this way so they have it documented what all the formulas are. Also, if you're trying to figure out why one of the formulas isn't giving you the answers you thought, you could do this to see all the formulas. Once you want it to stop showing formulas, you're just going to uncheck that button again, and you're right back to where you were. So I'm going to save this so it saves all our changes. But let's say I needed to have it as a second file. I wanted another file name, a different file name, same information. So I could do File, Save As, and if I want it in the same place, then I don't have to click Browse. If I want to put it someplace different, then I'm going to want to click Browse. I'm just going to stick a 1 or a 2. Let's just do a 2 at the end, and save it. So now I have in that location, if I look in my File Explorer, you'll notice I have the original game card as well as my new one that is Game Card 2. That's the end of Module 1. If you have trouble with any of these tasks, you should refer back to the text. We went through all of the TAN sections in Module 1. Some of these may not be covered in class time, depending on how much time your teacher has to cover the various things, how many questions there are. So they are all covered in these videos.